What is up, people? It's Dave. It's your man Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another round of album reviews. And kicking off, we have the new album from Boston-based Deathrockers, Final Gasp. The band's new album, Mourning Moon, will be released on September 22nd via Relapse Records. So, we do like Relapse. We have got a wee soft spot.
Absolutely destroying 2023 at the moment with apparent ease. They're just like, so I want another album.
Yeah, leveling up. This is the debut album from Final Gasp, a harrowing journey through all things hardcore, metal, and goth. Mourning Moon drags the listener through 12 thrilling tracks. Mourning Moon proves to be one of the most inventive journeys this side of the genre in recent times. Now Final Gasp are ready to emerge from the underground and step into the forefront of extreme music's new guard. Final Gasp recorded Mourning Moon in Philadelphia with famed producer Arthur Risk.
Risky business, Dave. It's risky business recording with that guy.
It really is. Its foundation was built by the band's two previous EPs, 2019's Baptism of Desire and 2021's Haunting Whisper. Every song was written with nothing but a natural feeling for what felt right, says vocalist Jacob Murphy. There's tons of different influences, but we're not really thinking about other bands. We feel like we've tapped into something that's our own. Yeah, it wasn't until I was like listening to the album when I was reading back through like the press release and stuff, like these guys just started putting stuff out in 2019.
Yeah, they're a relatively young band.
Yeah,
which is mind blowing.
Yeah, they sound like a band that have been going much longer. This doesn't feel like a debut album at all. So we were looking forward to this one. We did a reaction back whenever, to one of the singles, not that long ago, a while ago, can't remember now. It's all just a blur, really.
It was within the last month.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
yes,
okay.
Believe it or not, that time is a flat circle, Dave.
Apparently
what
so.
has been will be again.
Yes, so we were extremely excited to hear the new release from Final Gasp, especially it being on one of Duncan's favourite labels of 2023, Relapse Records. So what did we make of this debut? What did you think of Mourning Moon?
So you tickled my fancy, Dave, on this one a while ago now, like when the title track had been released, and you sent me the music video via WhatsApp, because we use modern technology, and in your message you basically said, have a listen to this, see what you think. And I was like, all right, cool. I was listening. I was like, that's fucking awesome. And you were like, that. Take a guess who produced it. And I was like, I didn't realise there was a quiz at the end of this, so listen to it again. And I don't know what made me like aim right there. I was like, Arthur Risk by any chance? You were like, bingo. Now the reason it was quite an interesting that, like, he's been a very busy producer of late. Releasing stuff that is a very unique sound, but none of his stuff sounds alike. Yeah, he's definitely got his vibe rooted in the 80s, and I kind of love it because of that. But it's all different shades of the 80s, whether it's kind of more kind of power prescient sort of thrash metal, or if you've listened to Poison Ruin this year, which is an album which still appears to divide people on the production. That kind of almost, I found a tape in the bottom of my drawer, kind of like old kind of fuzzy cassette sort of sound. Yeah. And in the case of Final Gasp, like something that is so deeply steeped in kind of new wave 80s punk. Yeah. So 2 punk albums this year by this guy. See, they didn't mention punk in their statement, and I think punk is at the backbone of a lot of this, but I can kind of see why there may be... The influences on the metal is definitely on the guitars, but it's like punk beats all the way through this, and vocally it's very punk. But So he's tapped into something else. My concern was that we have already seen some bands who have kind of reinvented the sound of late. The big one being our man Kvost and his Nerdwells and Beast Milk, aka Grey Pleasures. It really kind of put the kind of what would happen if Echo and the Bunnymen released a punk album, but today. They've already exists, and there have been bands who have copied that formula, and there's been a wave of interest in it. And listening to Mourning Moon, I was getting loads of that. I was getting loads of kind of Killing Joke, bits Echo and the Bunnymen, like a little smidge of kind of non-electronic and slightly darker Depeche Mode. Like, it was all in there. But then Climax Infinity, the second track, which is the opener of this one, came out, and it was snarly, and it was punky, and it was in your face. And I genuinely at that point was like, well, fucking all bets are off. We'll see how this plays out on the album. Is it going to be a case of it's a half and half, or what's going on? And I'm pleased to say that Final Gasp have released an album which just continues to enthrall the more you listen to it. They have a sound. They very much have a sound. Yeah. But the versatility in that sound between pitch harmonic-y, squealy guitar parts that are very almost Slayer-esque in parts, right through to that kind of new wave, kind of punky new romantic side, like a more aggro, like Sisters of Mercy or something. Like, it's all in there, but it's delivered with the metal punk ferocity of a band who are clearly hungry. Yeah. And as a result of that, this album doesn't really have any lulls at all, but it has a ton of mood and atmosphere. And that's all delivered mostly by the composition as opposed to any like studio trickery. Yeah. Like, you come off Climax Infinity, which is this big snarly punky track, which is lots of energy and kind of lots of thrust and incredible kind of reverby vocals, kind of like recorded in a giant hall sort of sounding vocals. And you come out of that with all this kind of pent up like energy, right the track to Homebound, which really just like instantly slams the brakes on for this big ostentatious sort of synthy intro, which I mean instantly gets me fucking solid, Dave. And I was like, yes, this is what we need. It's like kind of an authentic 80s sound. Similar to how kind of Poison Ruin uses synth work on their stuff, except where they're going for a kind of, imagine what would happen if Medieval Knights had synthesizers, which is still the band I want to create, or the movie that I want to shoot. In the case of this one, you've got all this atmosphere. Homebound actually sounds like an opener. This could be the opening track of the album.
I think it was the first single they released.
I love the fact that Climax Infinity is the first track, though, because I think if you were to come out of Homebound and into something much snarlier and up pace, I think the disparate nature of the gulf between those two sounds might be like, this is a bit jarring. I love the fact that they start off with something kind of punky and metally, and then bring in some atmosphere, and then bring in some punky pace. Homebound is an absolute fucking banger. Like, it's great. Vocals, I love it. Like, he's got snarl in his vocal tone, but there's all those moments where she's like, how? You're like this, like, and you get the space and the reverb, and it's fucking glorious. This band is tight as fuck. Like, this is like smiley face tight. Like everything's in sync. You've got chuggy guitars, like triple pick. Well, not triple picking, but chuggy picking. Everything's like just synced right in. Plenty of rhythm, plenty of speed. And the production, anyone that was complaining about the old Risky Business production on Poison Ruin not having clarity, one, you're fucking wrong. But on this one, I kind of love how prominent the vocals are. The vocals sit very, very much at the front of the production here, but not to the detriment of anything else. and his vocal tone is so clear that you make out every lyric, every nuance, every note that he hits, and like that it transfers itself through. What's interesting about this is they utilize something that would generally annoy me, but it doesn't on this one. You go through Botched Ritual, which is a kind of slows things down. It's kind of like lots of kind of Tommy work, like huge fucking chorus, lots of like rattling fucking animal drum fill-ins and shit like that. And then at Frozen Glare, where things once again are kind of more restrained and held down. But Frozen Glare like closes on like a sound that kind of fades out and then goes into the track C's, which is essentially, it's an instrumental, but it's not a song per se. It's more like how Tool would use synth sims on Anima. It's like weird, like kind of loops and effects and all the rest. That's track 5, and the album has not been long thus far. Generally, I hate that shit. I'm like that. You're just like, put that later in the album, break things up. Really fucking works, because Blood and Sulphur is the next track, which is arguably the heaviest track on this one. It's just a big snarly bastard. Like there's no give on this one at all. It just goes straight for the jugular. It's nice and short as well. It's under 2 minutes, gets in, gets out, and then you get Mourning Moon, which is the kind of the single that we first heard back whenever. Also the title track. And it's the one where we go full Echo and the Bunnymen.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love that era of music anyway. And I love bands that are not using it as a gimmick, but actually love that era and utilize it. That's why I love Beast Milk and Grey Pleasures as much.
Yeah.
So it kicks in. It's a fucking awesome track. Like really, really, really good. The music video as well. And I would suggest you check out some of the music videos. They do a combination of live footage, but Mourning Moon has this kind of almost kind of 1920s German expressionistic horror approach to it. Like it's not too far away from you would see something either from like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, or even to a kind of stretch. There's a weird Danish director called Karl Dreyer, and he did a movie called Vampire, and that's just all fucking weird, like strange shots and like fucking shadows and shit in the sea, and it like totally fits in with that. Mourning Moon's a great track, but it's kind of just after the halfway mark.
Yeah. And
what I loved about this is the album kind of loops itself smartly. So you come out of Blood and Sulphur, which closes it with a bang. Mourning Moon is kind of doing what Homebound's doing. It's kind of like lengthening back out. And then we get right down to business, and this is where the kind of snarly metally stuff comes out. Unnatural Law is just a straight up thrash track. I fucking love it. Sim's great. The guitar work on this, you cannot understate how great it is. Yeah, it's doing kind of punky chords and all the rest, but it's all the pinch squeals and all the cool things and the little hooky bits they do just make it of that time. Yeah. That's what guitars were doing in the 80s. You know, they do it less nowadays, but in the 80s it was all like pointing at people and tweaking a string and we wink and a nod and we nudge back to the dressing room afterwards, you know what I mean? It was all a bit of that. But yeah, Unnatural Law just comes in like a 10-ton hammer, son. Then we go into 14 Gates, slows things down again. Once again, great fucking track. Loads of atmosphere, loads of personality, loads of goth. This album's goth as fuck, and I fucking love it. It's just so confident. You know, really, really, really confident. Temptation reminds me the next track, which is the third to last track. Kind of like when I first saw it come up, I was like, if they cover Temptation, all fucking bets they don't cover Temptation, right? Temptation is like once again a kind of punky, metally, hardcorey track. You know what I mean? It has that kind of clean kind of guitar sound, but it's all like shun shun jun 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 jun, like big fucking chunky pitch squealy things and all that. Don't know what the technique is, so I'm just going to call it pinch squealy things. It's a great fucking song. Once again, bathed in atmosphere, and it just lands for me. And then the album decides, like, we've got 2 tracks left to do. let's add something that we've maybe not necessarily done. And The Vanishing's the first one of that, where things just slow right down. And it's just like a big buildy up track. It's like its conscious effort is to build up to Rose of Heaven, which is the closer. And it does it really, really well. It takes its time. I think it is the longest track on the album. I think it comes in about the 4-minute mark. And it's the one where they just like get into like a bit, I can imagine it live, just like slow head banging here fucking everywhere. Vocally, he's kind of doing the Neil Fallon thing, not as in like singing like let me tell you, not like that, but it feels very preachy. It feels from the pulpit.
Yeah.
And then the album swings into Rose of Heaven, which is like a good old fashioned 80s closer. It's like it's got that kind of stompy kind of vibe about it. And this album finishes fucking strong, man. And I got to the end of it, and I don't know if it's what I expected I was going to get, if I'm honest. I think what I expected was a lot of Mourning Moon, essentially. I'd expected a lot, because that's kind of how my brain's been trained before, where bands use that as an influence in there. That is the predominant feature in their music. And Final Gasp are actually so much more smarter than that. Instead of making it the kind of fulcrum central point of what their sound is actually like, it isn't really, but it is at the same time. If you go hunting for it in the songs, it's full of kind of that 80s goth punk attitude, and it's a wash with it, and the chords they choose, and the vocal delivery they have, and the production overall. But there's a whole lot more bite in here and precision in the songwriting. I mean, they've got 2 EPs under their belt. They've not been around all that long, but what surprised me most was how assured this album sounds front to back. Like, the songs are very, very well placed. Even the inclusion of a kind of needless instrumental track did not like impact at all the listen for me. And if anything, on subsequent listens, I've kind of taken that bit for, right, shit's about to kick off. You know, like that moment where you're like, well, you take a deep breath in. Like the first time anytime you listen to Flying Whales by Gojira and you have that 2-minute intro just to settle yourself because you know you're going to be headbanging for 7 minutes after it. It's kind of that way. I think it's really, really well placed. I love their style. I think there's a lot of bands that are kind of trying to capture this. I don't know how many are successfully capturing it as quick as Final Gasp are, and also carving out their own personality and sound. Relapse Records are such an interesting record label at the moment. Like, genuinely, if you look at it, this year, they kicked off the year with Obituary. Like, you know what I mean? Like, out the door with, like, kind of classic death metal. And they've released 2 very, very, very different kind of punk sounding albums here. And then shitloads in between that just gets my nipples hard. I think whoever it is that is kind of in charge of acquiring music at the moment is definitely making a conscious effort to try and make the label's roster as different as possible. I'm wearing like a King Woman t-shirt. Like, I forget that King Woman's on Relapse. You know what I mean? Like, they have a roster of like some of the best doom and sludge, some of the best death metal, some of the weirdest kind of avant-garde, kind of proggy, weird electronic-y, matty shit out there. But they also have delivered in 1 Poison Ruin and 2 Final Gasp, I think 2 absolute standout punk releases this year that are different from the norm. When you see punk, it's not what you're thinking, it's something else. And Final Gasp are just a delight to listen to. I love it. Arthur Risk as well. I cannot stress that he's creeping up, man. Like, there are so many producers just now that are it's not just doing their own thing, but are really. It's like when we were back in the day and you could tell a Ross Robinson album, you could tell a fucking Rick Rubin album, and then there was a time period where you, like, it was just a sea of names and you wouldn't know any of them. And I think there's a kind of push nowadays, or whether it's conscious or not, that producers are really starting to put their stamp with the band as opposed to putting the stamp with what they think their style is. And they've become very versatile. The production on this is fucking chef's kiss good. I absolutely love it. If ever there was a production that marries up with a band's sound. But first and foremost, this is an album of great fucking tracks. It flows really, really well. I love the authenticity of it. I love the playing. Like the guitar stuff is all. The tracks all have their own feel. None of them sound alike. Yes, there's same techniques and similar chords, but none of them sound alike. And vocally, this is on fucking fire. I love the guy's vocals. And then, like, the drumming, which is, I think he's almost an unsung hero here. Like, I love it. I think it fits things. There's flurries. There's loads of shit. This was more than what I thought I was going to get from Final Gasp, and I mean that in the best possible way.
Right.
Had they given me an album just full of Mourning Moons, I would have been really happy with that. But the fact that the album has so much more, and they're not just a one-trick pony, is the thing that makes me, like, genuinely want to keep coming back and listen to it. I've listened to this a lot in the last week, and I've not tired at all of it. So I can see me just continuing on that train for quite some time. So yeah, I think this is absolutely fucking great from a band that we didn't know anything about fucking 4 months ago. So
nice.
There you go.
Nice.
What about you, Fickle Dave? That's what they call you on the street. Here he comes, Fickle Dave. These fickle opinions coming to fick things up.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I actually had listened to the 2 EPs that they'd put out before this release, so I did give them a quick listen before checking out the album. And although like the core sound is still very much there, their sound has become even more refined, even in that very short space of time. The EPs were maybe a touch more aggressive with, there's still a bit of a hook in there, but not nearly as much as they have on this release. I don't think I was quite as surprised as you with this one. I think, like, if you've heard the singles, like they put out 4 singles.
Yeah, I'd heard 2. So
yeah, well, I'd heard all the singles. So I think if there's a very very good chance if you like the singles, you're probably going to enjoy the rest of this release. Each single they put out all had something different about them, so I knew we were going to get a bit of a mixture on this. Either in the tempo or the intensity, or some tracks had more of a hook. And I feel like the album kind of fleshes out those ideas even more, giving you more sides to their sound. It's quite a fairly kind of dark and gloomy kind of 37 odd minutes, with, as you said, that big 80s goth streak kind of dripping from the guitars and synths, and that runs all the way through it, and it kind of ties the whole album together. I think it's difficult not to go Killing Joke or Echo and the Bunnymen. That's going to happen. There are similarities that you'll hear straight away, but I do also think that there is something in this, and the way it's been kind of crafted and blended, that does give off a kind of aroma of its own. And I think that's down to each individual band member's style and personality coming together as one on the album. I think they all have something they do really well, or a unique attribute in their playing that makes it sound like Final Gasp. The triple guitar attack, that's right, there's 3 guitarists on this, Alex, James and Peter. I think that is
a distant amount of guitars.
It is. I think that in itself is quite a unique thing and a clear difference this band has over others, and I think they do put that to good use. I love the way, even small things, the way they kind of panned the guitars so you could hear all 3 individual styles coming through, especially on tracks like Frozen Glare, where you can hear them all coming in at separate times. There's also times where they use different tones and different effects, which gives the track some really cool layers. And I think as a listener, I think there's a lot of reward in the re-listens when you start to pick out a lot of that stuff.
It's kind of a lost art, isn't it? A little bit. Like when you think about it, like, I think as a product of our time now, like, it's very easy for 2 guitarists in a band, or a band that has 2 guitarists, to go at that. Right, you've got your setup, I've got my setup. But we're going to use the same effects pedal. Like, so essentially you might as well just double the guitar up. You know what I mean? Like, for all, but in the 80s you didn't have that. People were sponsored by different things. They had their own setups, and as a result, they played their own amps. Is that sort of thing. So you got uniquely different tones from the guitars. And that's kind of what makes them interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. Same with the bass work as well. There's a lot of cool little flurries from Sean Rose, and they do that very cleverly, where they pull back on the guitars, let them drop out a little bit, and the bass takes more of a focal point in places. For me, from going from the EPs to the album, I felt like vocally is where there's a huge difference from the first two EPs to the album. I think Jacob Murphy has definitely come into his own, for sure. His style on the EP was it's a little wilder in places, where on Mourning Moon he's settled into it a bit more. His tone has a bit more personality, and he sounds much more confident in his delivery. He's got the aggression still on this when he needs it, to kind of drive the tracks. Tracks like Blood and Sulphur, he really pushes them forward, his vocal delivery, where it, he almost touches on something more kind of blackened in places as well. Mm-hmm. But he also has this really cool, gloomy melody that you can't help but be kind of hypnotized by. And I felt like it was in those moments where the album really kind of comes alive. I think the title track for me is just a fantastic moment on the album. I loved it when I heard it as a single. And for me, that kind of hears Jacob deliver one of his most kind of controlled but best melodies on the release. It's super catchy. And as you said, the video is awesome as well. I was watching the video today, actually. But he still has these really cool aggressive moments on the album as well, where he'll let out these little kind of deathier growls now and again. So plenty to like texturally on the vocal front on this album. This production couldn't be any more suited to the band's sound. Like Arthur Risk, we've said it before, like he's a talented son of a bitch. He's got a real gift when it comes to adding character and making something feel like it was made in a completely different era. Even the heavier stuff he's done, like if you listen to stuff he's done with Jabalba and stuff like that, I mean, again, it's got its own kind of original kind of sound as well. Here he's managed to capture that kind of like energy of a band in a room, but that room is fucking massive, and the mics have just like soaked up all this echoey goodness, and it's like it's maybe it's not as heavy, but it put me in the same headspace as like A Loner by Hangman's Chair, which came out last year. Just the kind of size and the kind of atmosphere of it, I loved that. I thought the production was fantastic. I think it's a very solid debut album from Final Gasp. I don't think every track is a home run for me. I think there was a couple of tracks here and there I felt maybe weren't quite as memorable as others, or they were missing just a final piece. But for the most part, a very easy album to stick on and just kind of enjoy the ride. It did kind of do what it says on the tin for me, but I think it's varied enough throughout that it doesn't feel like they're just kind of rehashing the same ideas. And when they nail all the elements on one track, it's fantastic. I think going forward, if they can do that throughout an entire album, it's going to be gold for me. But as this kind of debut goes, very enjoyable, very solid record for me. Scores wise, what are you thinking for Mourning Moon?
Oh, it's a 4.5 for me. I think this is absolutely fucking great. I think there's room to grow for sure. Yeah. Like yourself, I think when it all clicks together, it's difficult to not just smile when you hear let's call this fucking bitching. Yeah. They're on the right record label. Relapse have the power to push these guys and get them out there and hopefully get them over here. And I would fucking love to see these guys live. And I don't care if it's in a fucking sweaty basement venue or it's as it was with Poison Ruin, the upstairs attic of a bar. I don't know. It's the weirdest fucking venue ever. But yeah, I want to see this live. I'm chuffed for them. I think this is fucking great. Arthur Risk, we need to hunt him down and get him on here for an interview. But yeah, this is it's such an assured, confident release that, like you say, like coming into it, the fact of being around for a couple of years kind of hurts my brain. It just feels so realised, and I hope that they get a bit of traction because they fucking earned it, man. Definitely.
Absolutely. Nice. I'm a 4 out of 5 on this one. Nice. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I have to agree, it's very confident for a debut album. The quality they've knocked out on this album is really, really impressive. Arthur Risk, another fantastic production job from him. I love the character and personality that he puts into his albums. The sound is just incredible on this one. So yeah, 4 out of 5 for me. That's the new album from Final Gasp. It's out on September 22nd on Relapse Records. Links below. Check out the band. There's a pre-order link down there as well. You can check out on Bandcamp. Let us know what you think. Have a listen. There's 4 singles out. Give them a listen. Stick some comments in below. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.